Learning online marketing for the purposes of selling music and products has been really interesting for me. And the big thing that comes out that I've learned about it is the idea of culture. And this is something that resonates really strongly. I think culture is really important. And it's interesting like what culture is, because culture is how we perceive the world and also how we behave. And there's personal culture and there's also collective culture. And like culture is kind of, I think, inherently collective. I think that the concept of vista or worldview is part of culture. And so just want to, the thing that like I'm really, really into Tool, and the thing that actually really got me with Tool is the culture of some of the fans. I think that the big thing for me was Tool Unity, the forum, and just like I resonated very strongly with people sort of mentioning Aleister Crowley, Discordianism, and Joseph Campbell. And just in general, the posts on that forum were really cool. And I got into the culture of the band. And I liked the music, but honestly, it's very strange because I think I resonated more strongly with the culture than I did with the music initially, because I find like Anima is a very challenging album. Like I like it now, 15 years later. I think it's great, but it's sonically very difficult. And it's kind of a long album. Like all Tool albums are pretty long. So I just think that's kind of interesting. And it's not the graphics at all. Like I think some of the graphics are cool. Some of them I didn't like. And then, yeah, like I really got into the whole Bill Hicks thing. I mean, I just found him really funny and honest. So it's interesting how important culture is. And like, going on social media is fascinating, this concept of culture. And anyways, so I wanted to talk about it because I've been reflecting. It's been very challenging for me to write my bio, my artist bio, because, what are the things that will make people connect with me, or what are the things that will resonate with like the people who will really like me as an artist? And I don't want to like say too much, and then it's kind of been a long story because like this is my life. But anyways, I've been thinking about culture, and so I participate in various cultures. And then I also have a really strong personal culture. So one of the things I've been reflecting on is like, okay, well, I grew up feeling like an outsider, and I was always fairly academically oriented, and I did well in school, and I liked school. And I had nerdy friends, and like I studied classical music for the purpose of just developing really good technique. And at one point I sort of realized, well, singing this obscure music, because opera really is fairly obscure in North America today, and singing in foreign languages, like, I mean, I primarily really enjoy German lieder, which is not opera anyways, but like I got into, singing in a foreign language it didn't feel like I was going to really connect with the right people for me. Although this isn't always true. There's some really cool people in opera. But anyways, that's why I sort of didn't feel like it was the art form for me to continue into. Because I didn't want to be part of like the opera establishment. Like, it's the same fucking 50 operas over and over. I mean, it's like yoga, right? You're finding newness in the sameness. You can do it, but it just wasn't for me. And I noticed, so I kind of rebelled. I had this rebellion streak where when I wasn't honoring my creativity and my creative drive to write music and express myself, like really express myself, I learned this technique, and then I also started to rebel, and that it came out as, I mean, smoking weed and doing psychedelic drugs, like mostly acid. I actually am really grateful I never did any addictive substances. Just was not drawn to them. But yeah, acid and mushrooms. Anyway, so I went to Burning Man. And the whole point of Burning Man, I was told it was cool, looked really cool. It was primarily the drive to go to Burning Man was like, this is very creative. Because it is, the entire city is created. I think it's a very interesting concept. And then the contrast stuff in life started happening so I wanted to participate more in that culture. And so I tried to participate in like Burning Man communities in Southwestern Ontario or in like parties. And I sort of kind of got onto the rave scene a little bit. And that was, that's been an interesting experience because I had the experience of there being occult elements in certain parts of the party scene. And the parties weren't just being run for people to come and have a good time. There was elements of sort of mind control and of, forming people's lives to conform to someone else's desires. And right now I'm in this position where I'm connecting with cultures and like, I have a background in psychedelia, but I really don't want to I feel like I really want to talk about plant medicines, but I don't really want to, I feel very hesitant to promote people like going and partying and doing drugs. Although I had like personal growth through that, it was very challenging. And the things that supported me, developing through that adversity was actually my background in a classical humanitarian education, my background in, classical symbolism, mythology, and magic, my background in yoga, my background evolving into nutrition and self-care. And had I not had that background, I would have been fucked. Like, I would have been really manipulable. And so I think that this is really important. Like, and I look at some of the imagery that's like being pushed out there and like, there's some nice psychedelic-esque images and I don't find that I resonate with them. And I'm in this strange spot where I want to blend like organic and inorganic in a really aligned fashion because of the vacuum of space-time, it is all the same underlying pattern. So whether the pattern expresses itself in something that is digital, like a digital image, or even like the way that a computer looks inside, or a leaf, or the way that plants grow in a forest, it's actually the same underlying pattern. Like inherently, this pattern is a part of the space-time vacuum, and it just manifests in some way, shape, or form. It manifests. And that's kind of, what I think it's something that really like, not stuns me or just like, it feels like an elevating concept. Like I just get like, wow, that's really cool because it's this unifying concept. And that unifying concept is this invisible thing that we call the field that for like 50 years science, for like 100 years science pretend it doesn't exist. It's amazing how far we've gotten, essentially ignoring this major principle of physics. So I feel like I've had a really interesting experience because it's like here I am. I'm pretty well versed in classical music culture. I'm pretty well versed kind of sort of on the party scene. And that's really interesting because those are often different cultures. And it's like, it was all a fun exploration of culture and seeing what people do and how they do it and, participating in it, but ultimately needing to find a place that really resonates in how I participate. And like, I experienced so much coercion on the party scene. It got really weird. Like, and then, people selling drugs to control other people. Like right now, the whole thing with like the oxys and it's, there's just all these elements of like enslaving humans. And it's just this thing like we really need to wake up to in our culture because we do have the freedom to make different choices. And I think that this concept really comes out very strongly in 2020. And like now as I speak these words, we have this like crazy stellium in Aquarius. And it's like, wow, So I see my music as new age music or Aquarian age music because I think rock and roll is Aquarian. And when we look at culture, like if you look at rock and roll comes from blues, right? It comes from blues and folk. It's actually, I think, the product of blending black and white culture. But when you see like the 60s and the 70s, when rock and roll kind of really, there was the current there that was really about freedom. And like, there was just this major impetus towards freedom and expanding consciousness. And I mean, like in the 50s, we thought that we would have electromagnetic cars at this point. It's stunning that we don't, actually. Something went really wrong. because we do have the technology. And yeah, so like, wouldn't it be, anyways, so that's what I like rock and roll, because it's about freedom. And there are many, many different kinds of rock and roll, but I just feel like when I look at like, when I think of rock and roll and I think of like Jimi Hendrix or Janis Joplin or Led Zeppelin or the Beatles, sort of like that era of rock and roll, there's so much creativity, and that's what inspired me to want to be an artist. Yeah. But right now it's like, I've just been sort of reflecting, because I've just been thinking about hip hop, because right now hip hop has taken sort of the place of rock and roll as like a big popular art form. And like, there's great hip hop out there, but there's so much. I just noticed this, especially with hip hop and pop songs, where they kind of sound, they're like not music. They're not, they just seem so meaningless. And I think that hip hop is really fascinating because it comes from, I think that it comes from voodoo culture, where it's really, it's speaking and repeating and creating a reality with your words, which is really a divine act of creation. But when I look at like a lot of mainstream hip hop, it's all about like sex and money, which is just a facet of experience. It's just part of experience. And like, I look at like, I get exposed to a lot of hip hop inadvertently because I do martial arts, and it's very like, I don't know. It's just funny. Like some of the beats, like I understand why someone doing BJJ would put it on, and like where it resonates in the body. It's very like, I don't know. It's kind of, it's funny, like very physical kind of fight music, and that's just a facet of experience. And I feel like when I look at mainstream culture, we're kind of being put to sleep, or we're being asked to focus on the physical, on money. We have this alleged sexual freedom that is more just like our sexuality being used to walk us on a leash. And it's just a small facet of the human experience. And especially now we are expanding out of that. Like we have so much more. It's not about invalidating the physical, except we have the ability to expand how we are in the physical space. And yeah, there we go.